Okay. We're just firing up episodes. I'm getting better and better at this. Learning how to clear the cards, turn the light on, which just requires plugging in an outlet. I mean, I'm getting pretty good at it. Dropping the stuff into Dropbox when I'm done. You name it. Having a podcast studio in your house is so convenient. If you think about it, I wonder how many collective views between Facebook, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and Instagram on personal Moto Academy and Moto Academy podcast accounts. Also, just the listens, Podbean alone on Spotify and iTunes or Apple Music. How many views and listens we've been able to accumulate just from this podcast studio alone, return on investment in that. So like if you guys are questioning, man, I've always wanted to start a podcast, but shoot, I need 2 cameras if I'm going to have guests. The cameras are, I don't know, a couple $1,000s a piece, maybe $3,000 a piece. These mics are, I don't know, I'm just making up prices. I don't remember. $1,000 a piece. What else? The light. I don't know. I probably spent $8,000 to $10,000 on this studio. Well worth the investment. Welcome back. Moto Academy podcast. Not the number 2 podcast in motocross, the number 1 podcast in motocross, without a doubt, bar none. Moto Academy, global motocross community, and I'm grateful for you guys. We're going to start out. Guess what? We're on tour. And by we, I mean myself and Coach Mitchell. By the way, I don't know, guys. I think I'm a pretty good teacher, but we get so many emails talking about how good Mitchell is and so many just raving reviews on Coach Mitchell. It's amazing. And it also makes me a little insecure because I feel like he gets more raving reviews than I do. I don't know if people just assume that I'm going to be good, or maybe I'm just not as good as I thought. Just kidding. I get a lot of good reviews too, and we're grateful for them. Thank you guys for sending through positive feedback, constructive criticism, even negative feedback. We don't get much of it, but when we do, sometimes it makes us think of things that we have to do and to level up. There's a lot of stuff that we've added to the website this year alone that is because of negative feedback that we've received or constructive criticism that we've received. So it's extremely valuable. But we're going on tour. And we've got 3 different things going on. We've got tour dates, we've got summer camps, and we've got Mastering the Basic classes. So the first Mastering the Basic class will be with Coach Mitchell in Oregon, apparently. Didn't even know that. At Albany MX in Oregon. So Mastering the Basics, the idea of these classes is it's for guys that are, or gals, that are first time going to a moto track, brand new to riding in general, or just want like my classes are super fundamental, but even a more simplified fundamental version. These classes will be done for the most part on flat ground. You might get to the track at the end of the day to work a section, but very, very basic. So anytime you see Mastering the Basics, just know they're with Coach Mitchell and you're going to be focusing on the basics. So we got a few of those coming up. Check the website. First one being in July. Tour dates. First of all, we got summer camps coming up. Tomahawk MX, July 8th to the 12th is the first one. We have a ton of signups. It's going to be, I think it might be the most fun thing that Moto Academy has ever done yet. And I can't freaking wait. We've got one in July, Tomahawk MX. We got one in August, Sunset Ridge in Illinois. I'm telling you guys, if you live anywhere within a 25-hour driving radius, if you live on planet Earth, go make time, get a flight. We'll figure out your bikes. I'm sure I shouldn't promise that, but I bet you if you want to fly in, we can find you a bike to rent. You could probably rent one of my Starks for the week if you wanted to. Fly in, drive in, take a boat, find a train, planes, trains, and automobiles, get there. It's going to be completely epic. And if you can't invest all of your time to make it the full week, the full 5 days, there's day passes available. So you can come and pop in for 1 day, for 2 days, for 3 days. They're not going to be like a normal class. The structure is completely different. It's going to be just fun and a crazy, crazy learning experience. I can't wait. And then normal tour dates. We got June 7th, ADK MX in New York, Coach Mitchell. June 12th, Moto 101. That one's been sold out for a while. Shout out UK. Can't wait for that one. June 14th, UK again. I'll be at Flackwell Heath. I've gone there before. That's a spelling error on the website. Sure is. That's getting sent through. Please hold. It's spelled right in the flyer, at least. Okay. Flackwell Heath. There are spots left for that one. That's in the UK as well. June 15th, we've got Coach Mitchell coming to Arkansas, Deer Creek MX. June 22nd, I will be at Super Coupe MX in Michigan. Love that place. That will be a class with me. June 24th, Coach Mitchell featuring Spencer Wilton. This will be an off-road and a moto class at Wild Rose MX in Calgary. Super cool location. I'm bummed I won't be there this year with you guys, but at least we have a Moto Academy location there, and to have Spencer Wilton, I think that's his home track. Super cool. June 27th, BP 73 in Minnesota. That will be a Coach Mitchell class. June 28th, I will be at Martin MX in Michigan. June 30th, Iowa, Oak Ridge MX. That's a Coach Mitchell class. And then July 1st, I will be back at 508 International in Massachusetts. The last one was amazing. So come join us. Yeah, there you have it for the tour dates. Today on this podcast, hang on. Just a quick question for AJ. Parents are wondering if you could do a session of training for the smaller bikes. On our junior track, some of the smaller bikes have issues with the big track. It might be worth having Mitchell go there for a mastering the basics, or probably mastering the basics, and then we can market that towards the little guys, since Mitchell lives fairly close to there. And they're right, that track is a big time sand track, so it's not super appropriate for super beginners or for the little guys. So yeah, maybe worth seeing if mastering the basics makes sense at some point this summer. Okay, sorry guys, whoopsie daisy, just working. We're gonna do podcast questions. I've got a whole bunch of them. Thank you guys for sending them in. The Moto Academy app has been completely popping off, and I couldn't be more grateful to be able to, my schedule's been pretty darn busy lately, to be able to fly out, have a couple days of classes, come back home, and pop back into the app, and to see how much action is going on in there, how much you guys are helping each other. It's so cool. I know I say this every time, but it is so cool, and I'm so grateful truly for every single one of you guys in there, not just the OGs, although of course grateful for you guys, but every single person that's in there. And I think a lot of you see how special that the community is, and that it is like this feeling of compounding growth that's happening right in front of our eyes is really quite cool. So thank you guys. And we're doing our absolute best too, to like really tie in the experience. And that's part of what we're doing this month in June with our summer riding program. So if you guys haven't heard about it yet, inside the Moto Academy app, we're doing a summer riding program. First month being June. We have a complete structure week to week. Our live streams that are our community live streams will be to basically brief and debrief on the monthly riding program that we're doing, to be able to track your guys' progress, to hear, check in, see how we're doing, see what we're struggling with, see what we're doing well with. There's a complete, basically an itinerary to follow. And then there's challenges attached to it as well. So you can, upon completion, you can earn badges, which then those badges help you level up to different statuses within the app, which once you reach certain statuses within the app, you'll have like all types of really cool benefits inside the Moto Academy. Amazing. It's super cool. And it's also a highly unique training structure. What I mean by that is it is not your typical, hey guys, we're going out Monday, we're going to do 2:30 plus twos, we're going to go as fast as we can, we're going to try to get the fastest lap time possible. Kind of old school training. This is very, very new school. It's nothing that I've ever seen before. Hey, it might not even work. It's an experiment. But I can almost guarantee you that if you guys stick to it, the discipline alone to be able to stick to the structure of what we're putting out there for these months and for the weeks for this training program, you will level up at a rate that you have never leveled up before. I really, really believe that. I think the only way that doesn't happen is if you guys kind of like make your own version of it. Try not to do that. Anytime you try to make your own version of it is usually just subconscious self-sabotage or excuses. Just do it. If you feel like you're getting slower, good. You're supposed to probably get slower at first. And you might get slower for a week. You might get slower for a month. You might get slower for the whole summer. That's irrelevant. You're going to build a foundation, a strong foundation, to where your riding will then improve forever. And that's the whole idea. That's the concept. That's what basically my whole goal with all of it, right? Okay, we're going to hop into questions. To post questions inside the Moto Academy app, send in a video, a message, even a comment. As long as you just hashtag podcast questions, it will pop up on my feed here and I can answer it. So even if you responded to somebody else's podcast question and then you just need to ask another question, just hashtag podcast questions and it will populate into where I need to see it. Like this one, for example, is a comment to post. Let's see. Ohad Tamir. Shout out Ohad. Where's he from? Checking his profile. Doesn't say. I would love to know where he's from. Podcast questions. Hi, AJ. So I was training like your instructions in corners and I am finishing my braking before the turn. Good. But I am finding myself continuing with engine braking until the apex of the turn. Is this okay? Or should I brake more and start accelerating from the beginning of the turn? Great question. So what he means is that he's trying to release the brakes right at the entrance, but he's continuing to kind of coast, let's say the first 30, 40, 50% of the turn, but he's in a gear that's creating a lot of engine brake. So it's almost making him feel like he needs to accelerate earlier. What I would say to that is he on a Yamaha? Check out this profile picture. Can't tell in the profile picture. Usually that happens with Yamahas because they have so much torque that if you go down to second gear, like on a Yamaha 250F, and you try to coast into a corner, it's going to rev up, get the engine brake too much so, and kind of like pull you down into the turn and force you to feel like you have to accelerate too quickly and too early for what you're comfortable with in the corner. So find a correct gear. Sometimes engine brake is appropriate. Sometimes you want a lot of it, but sometimes you really just want to free the bike up to have that roll speed in the first part of the corner. And a lot of that is dependent on gear selection. So maybe try a gear taller. I always recommend, especially for people trying to find a flow, that you don't, believe it or not, want to start your acceleration too early in the corner. You want to utilize a pretty big roll speed zone. And I demonstrate this at class by getting off the brakes at where I say you should, which is right at the beginning of the corner. Get off the brakes there and I'm able to coast the entire corner. And I do that by entering fast enough to then just maybe apply a little bit of front brake and ease on the front brake, modulating it through the corner. And I can coast the entire corner in almost every situation, where the average rider or your brand new rider will come in so slow that if they were to try to coast, they would make it like 2 feet and then they would essentially just tip over. The reason that makes it difficult is because then you're trying to apply really gentle throttle and not disrupt the lean angle of the bike from the very beginning of the turn. It's just more difficult to do it that way. So hopefully that makes sense. I think proper gear selection is probably your solution. Great question. Mark24, thoughts of Starks racing with MX bikes? I think we answered that already. That was forever ago. Whoopsie daisy. Okay, let me get out of that question. All right. No, answered that one too. Loki. We got Loki Hampson. Ooh, I feel like he's asked some good questions already, and I don't think we've answered this one yet. But Alley Cats liked it. So that means we have answered it. Okay, for sure haven't answered this one. Sorry. The organization of these is slightly confusing to me. I'm going to blame it on Allie. It's got to be Allie's fault one way or another. Let's like this before. Chad Dayton. Shout out, Chad. Must be fairly new to the Moto Academy because I don't recognize that username unless you change usernames. So shout out, Chad. I'm new to TMA, so not... Oh, okay. Answers it right there. So not sure if this has been asked yet, but I have way more access to woods riding than track, but wanting to start going to the track. So does focusing on technique in the woods potentially make you more effective on the track, or is it neither here nor there? Thanks in advance. Chad, you could argue me on this, but I would just say that anything you do on two wheels is going to translate to different facets of your riding. So practicing your technique and trying to hone your technique in the woods is only going to help you when you get to the track. In my opinion, I think there's less variables on a moto track, and so therefore it is easier than it is riding in the woods. So practice in the woods and have confidence when you go to the track. Usually woods guys coming to the track are super nervous. They're worried about the jumps, which the jumps are the easiest part. And ask me for advice on how to build confidence and how to start learning the jumps, because I have a very simple, safe process to learn how to do it. And then as far as the riding goes, yeah, absolutely. Everything you do in the woods will translate over. The exact attack position from the feet to the knees, to the hips and butt, to the chest, to the elbows, to the vision, to all of that, it translates extremely well. So yeah, practice, watch the videos in here, study it, everything that I teach on the track, pretend I'm teaching it in the woods. And by the way, we also have a pretty darn specific off-road masterclass coming out with Rich Larson, who is a very high-level instructor. That's going to be for, your double blip type obstacles. You're going up over big obstacles that you have to do kind of a larger double blip on, log doubles, stuff like that, hill climbs and getting stuck on hill climbs. So things that maybe aren't relatable to a moto situation, we're going to cover all of that. And we have covered all of that in the Rich Larson Master Course. That comes out at some point this month in June. So keep your eyes peeled for that as well. So many plugs in this podcast, but we have so many exciting things coming out. Good question, Chad. Thank you for sending it in. All right, we got a podcast question coming from the one and only Max. He's got just a sick hat on. We're going to have these for sale at summer camp.
What up, AJ? It's your boy, Max the Gray Rabbit. Hey, podcast question for you here. Rode the big track and not C track for the first time this week.
Shout out.
I've been super jacked up on it. Corners, ruts, zero problems, rollers, perfectly fine. It's now just starting to tackle these jumps. I feel comfortable with jumps. There's just so many jumps on this track. The question is where to start, how to start tackling them. You got your rhythms, your doubles, your tables. What do we start doing? Do I start working with others, start following? So thank you. And shout out Arvent as my motivation. Fastest progressor here. Max out.
Shout out Max. Shout out Arvens, who is a good role model of somebody that's like really dedicated to the craft and trying to level up. Great question. Great timing of that question too, coming from what I was just talking about. So first time riding kind of the big boy track. I don't care if you're 6 years old or if you're 30 years old or if you're 60 years old. The intimidating part and the focus is immediately, like I just said, going to shift to the jumps. And where do I start? That is the common question. So where you want to start, Max, is on the most forgiving obstacle on the track. And the way to be able to qualify, is this a forgiving obstacle or not? Run yourself through a couple of hypothetical scenarios. If I go long on this, what could potentially happen? What does the landing look like? What does after the landing look like? Is there an alligator-infested pond that I might fly into? Is there a cement barrier that I might run into? Is there a tree I might decapitate myself on? Is there, another jump right away to where that could become an issue? Figure out what's after that landing if you go long and what that scenario could play out like, and have an idea of, if I do go long, this is going to be the strategy, right? Okay, now take it the other direction. If I come up short, What kind of obstacle, what does this landing look like? Is it super sharp? Am I going to just break a wrist as soon as I land? Am I going to get kicked into an endo for sure if I frame case it? So therefore, pick something that coming up short is not an issue, to where you can build 5 feet, 10 feet, halfway, 3/4, full distance, build your way to it without really something that has a big gap. Or even tabletops sometimes aren't safe because the landing will be so steep that it'll create like this really big bounce zone, which you want to pick jumps that don't have a big bounce zone. So that's one factor. Takeoff as well. Find a jump that has nice, smooth, like nicely built transition of a takeoff. There's a lot of jumps that are built a little janky. Maybe they're too short and steep, so it creates a kick. Some jumps have ruts in the face. Some, depending on where they're located on the track and what skill level of riders ride the track and what the dirt is like, will start to kind of like cup out and get square edges in the takeoffs because people blipping the throttle where they shouldn't and the dirt falling off. So pick a smooth jump face. What are some other factors here? I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but being able to read the scenario, jump face, jump landing, coming up short, going long, making sure that you got all of your bases covered, you have all of your scenarios covered. It's the same way like when you learn how to fly a plane, they teach you that when you go to take off, what's your plan? If something fails immediately upon takeoff, like what's your plan? You better have a plan, right? And it's the same thing for hitting a jump on a dirt bike. If you don't have a plan, then when something goes wrong, you're going to panic. So that's where I would start. And Max, you're inside of the app. If you guys aren't inside of the app and you have these questions, send them to me. Send a GoPro video of the track. Send a video or a couple pictures of the track, and I will select the jumps for you so that you can progress safely. That's the biggest thing, is I see people just pick the wrong jumps to learn on. Point blank. That's it. They pick the wrong jumps to learn on. So hopefully that makes sense. Max will make sure you don't make those same mistakes. Great question. Excellent question. Super valuable information too. By the way, guys, hydrating over here. This episode is sponsored by Element. Oh yeah. Wow. Almost threw up. What flavor? What is that? Orange. We got orange in there at the moment. Drink Element. Go to drinklmnt.com/AJCat330. We are still partnered with Element. I plan to be for a while, honestly, until we create our own version of it. So hydration, there's a few key factors to be firing on all syllables all the time. Sleep is a huge one, and hydration will help with sleep, by the way. Nutrition, it's a mental game, without a doubt, but the mental game, a lot of it really boils back to hydration. And it's amazing how many people hydrate with just water alone, or when they supplement a sports drink of some sort. The sports drinks they're choosing have a ton of sugar for no reason, artificial flavors, all of the stuff that you don't want. Element is a pretty darn natural option. And you want that, especially if you're using something frequently. So with Element, I use it in the morning, I use it all day long, and I use it at night. There's never a time that I fill up this water bottle, which is 18 ounces, by the way. And I probably drink about, 10 to 15 of these a day, maybe more. There's never a time I fill it up and don't put a little bit of Element in it. Now, the amount of Element in which I put in varies depending on how much I'm sweating, how much I'm talking, you name it. But always Element in there. So everybody that's in Moto Academy that's tried it has loved it. If you don't like it, let me know. I want to hear what the negative feedback would be. But so far, just like Coach Mitchell, raving reviews. Go to drinklmnt.com/AJCat330. And if you use that link to order, not only does it support us because they're able to track that that's coming from Moto Academy, which is super helpful for us. They sponsor and pay for a lot of the stuff that happens on this podcast, which is cool. But you get 8 free flavors with your order. So that way you can tell which flavor is my jam, which one isn't. I like all of them, but hey, to each their own. You might have a favorite flavor. I think Allie's is grapefruit. Let us know what your favorite flavor is. All right, we got a question from Just Kidding. Just kidding. Allie liked it, so that means we've answered it. Okay, we got a question from Red Wolf Racing. Red Wolf Racing. Derek. Okay, I have a good question. I have a Yamaha YZ250F and a Stark Varg. Shout out, Derek. Good bike choices. I'm more confident on the Stark and I'm progressing fast on it, but my progress is slowly transferring over to the Yamaha. Is it a bad thing if I only want to ride the Stark because it's making me progress faster? Should I focus more on the Yamaha to bring me up to speed? Derek, great question. That's why the Stark is such a valuable supplement to riding a gas bike, whether you're riding 2-stroke or 4-stroke, is because it will simplify and get rid of all those variables, the clutch, the shifting, the rear foot brake potentially, trying to find power band if you're riding on a 2-stroke, all of the factors of riding gas bikes, which are necessary to learn at some point and to really hone the skills at some point. But to focus on technique, stripping it down and riding the Stark, there's no better technique tool than riding that bike. But don't fall into the trap of only wanting to ride it because it's easier. Go back and forth. Get onto your Yamaha. Get onto your Yamaha and do the same exact drills. Be patient with the fact that it's going to take you longer to level up on that bike, but it won't make you worse. When you go from the Stark to the Yamaha, what will be nice is any of the technique things you need to practice. So let's say it's footwork. You're going to get so much better while practicing on the Stark with footwork that when you get back onto the Yamaha, you'll have to think less about footwork. So therefore you can focus more on gear selection and clutch control and all of the other things that you have to add in on the Yamaha. So constantly go back and forth. It's the same advice I'd give somebody that is making a transfer, like maybe riding the 65 and 85, going back and forth. Eventually you're going to reach a point where you don't want to ride the 65 anymore because the 85 is so much easier. 85 to Super Mini to 125, 125 to 250F. People always go through these when they're riding and they have both of those bikes going back and forth. They get to a point where they think one is easier, or they feel that one is easier, so they always want to ride it. Just don't fall into that trap. I think it's great to go back and forth. That's what I use mine for. And I find that mine helps with exactly what you're saying. So cool. Happy to hear that. That was very cool. Good comments. What's cool is people answer when podcast questions are asked. There's always people answering. We got Driver Jamie helping answer. We got the Real GP in here in the comment thread. Loki Hampson, Mo Money. Shout out to you guys, because what's cool about the app is you can ask a question in sort of like like a forum, receive an answer, but actually receive a correct answer. Which seems like, yeah, duh, but the internet nowadays, you can't trust it. You can't trust it. I just had extreme paranoia that I didn't hit play. Okay, I did. That would have been annoying. Cameron Bradshaw has, by the looks of it, 95 different questions. So I'm going to answer these one paragraph at a time here. Question for the podcast. Shout out Cameron Bradshaw, by the way. Unbelievable profile picture. We're going to click in. Need a closer look at this profile pic. When working form, at what point do you start working form at high speed in order to really plant the technique at those speeds so that form doesn't go out the window when pushing the pace? Great question. The way that I would answer that is let the speed come organically and add it in very, very small spurts. So the way like we're doing June, for example, for the riding program, there is no speed added into there at all. You're supposed to spend 70% of your riding, 70%. So just about 3/4 of your riding is to be done at 50% perceived effort. That's it, 50% effort. The other 30% of your riding is no more than 70% effort. So that means that the speed for the month of June is essentially irrelevant. But when you start to really hone the technique and get really, really comfortable, you will find small parts on the track, like the entry of corners, where you can carry a bit more speed and it doesn't feel like things are coming at you a million miles an hour. And you'll know when that's appropriate, because you won't feel like you have to focus on 16 other things. you'll basically be like, oh, well, you know what? I feel pretty darn comfortable right here. Let's just flow through a little more speed. Let's just get off the brakes 5 feet earlier and see if I can carry some more roll speed through here. It might feel slightly uncomfortable the first time you do it, just slightly. Shouldn't feel out of control. And once you do it a few times, that speed becomes automatic. Next thing you know, you've saved 0.3 of a second in that section. You start doing that in the 20 corners on the track. Next thing you know, you've got 3 or 4 seconds that you've gained. So gaining time coming out of the corners a little faster, pushing through the obstacles a little bit quicker. It should only happen, again, when you have that part of the track so dialed in and the technique so dialed in that it almost, you start asking yourself the question of like, okay, what now? If there's anything else that you're concerned with or struggling with, make sure that that is subconscious, downloaded, automatic before you move on to trying to gain little tiny bits of time. And when you do it, the reminder is it should just feel slightly uncomfortable. It shouldn't feel completely out of control. Great question. Second question from Cameron. Is athleticism a born gift or can it be taught? Can someone that is not as gifted eventually become more athletic than someone who is born with it? Great question. My belief is that you have your genetic predisposition. So there's going to be people that are born, like Millie, for example. Her dad, me, is quite athletic. Her mom, Allie, also quite athletic. She also is being raised from birth and from before birth, from when she was in the womb, in like a very, very positive, uplifting, calm, still environment. There's no arguing going on. We're with her all the time. So she's not being dropped off at daycare or in environments that are kind of tainting her in any way. So genetically, she's going to have a really, really good starting point. Now, I think that's what people excuse as talent. And I believe that there is so much more room for growth once you are born. And once you get to a point where you're consciously working on a skill or an attribute, that is so much, there's so much more room to be made up than just predisposed genetics that you're born with. There's definitely some examples. I mean, is Usain Bolt genetically, is he going to be a faster runner than me? Yeah, I'd say so, probably. But who knows? Maybe if I, from day one, just had a dream of being the fastest runner in the world and did everything I could, who knows? Maybe my 5'11" body could be faster than however the heck tall he is. But I really operate under the belief that just talent doesn't exist, in that talent is created through discipline and through perseverance and through organized knowledge and just, creating a goal, thinking big and sticking to something forever and having the growth mindset as you do so. And that is a pretty hard combination to beat. Again, so much so that I think the argument of how am I going to stack up against the person that's talented becomes literally irrelevant. Jet Lawrence, not talented. He created and cultivated, the family did, an amazing amount of skill and diversity within that skill, learning in Europe, learning in the United States, learning in Australia, combining all of that knowledge, learning from his older brother Hunter and all the mistakes that they would have made with Hunter as he was growing up. Dazzy always would say, he'd say this at the dog pound constantly, if Jet wasn't better than Hunter, or Jet isn't better than Hunter, then we did something wrong in this learning process. So if that doesn't tell you right there, it's not that Jet is magically more talented, it's that he came second. So they learned lessons, he got a head start, and he was able to create that compounding growth, building what you would mistake as talent from such a young age. And it hasn't stopped because he hasn't had really too many injuries. So I hope that makes sense. I used to look at people and excuse their success as talent. That would be my excuse. I would either think it was talent or it was luck. So what you do when you excuse somebody's success as that, as talent or luck, is you are subconsciously telling yourself that you can't do it because of that. So instead, look at other people's talent or success, wealth, the business that they've created, the results that they've had on the bike. and look at it with a microscope and try to figure out how you can learn and apply things to what you're doing to be able to level up a little bit more. Sounds obvious, but that is a really fundamental paradigm shift that I was able to make as of recently, within the last couple of years. And it's made a world of difference, Instead of like instantly jumping to the fact that when somebody is posting something about this, or I see this happening, or this person drives by in this car, instead of me thinking like, oh, well, obviously their parent bought that car for them, or some negative thought like that. Now it's just try to learn. Okay, I don't know if I can learn much that this person drives by in that Range Rover that I might want, but if the parent did buy it for him, what did the parent do? How did they create their money? I don't know. Ask the right questions and it will shift your paradigm completely, and you will start to believe less and less and less and less in talent and born gifts. Does that make sense? But speaking of born gifts, you do to some extent, or a lot of extent, have to follow your intuition and try to find the thing that you are attracted to and that you're magnetized to. And a lot of people don't find that because they just don't search hard enough. So, and if you are a parent, I think the goal would be to create an environment in which your daughter or son can experiment with so many different things and try to just give them, the opportunity to find that which they're interested in, and try to ask the question of like, okay, how can you serve humanity with this thing? Like, how can you really make a difference in this thing? And if they're asking those questions right from the very beginning, then they're going to be the person that people look at and go, wow, they've really got a born gift. All right, next question. These are great questions, by the way, Cam. Should jumping braking bumps be something everyone should be practicing? And is it easier for lighter guys? Yeah, jumping braking bumps should be something everybody practices, because there is a time and a place where when those braking bumps get big enough, it makes more sense to jump them, to get off the brakes completely, to maybe slow down before, and then just little double, triple, double, triple, double, single. Doesn't matter. Get creative, get off the brakes, keep the bike light, and float through them. Best to practice that in a situation where you have maybe more of a sweeping turn afterwards. So you're not trying to do that while going into like a tight 180 that you need to get slowed down for. But once you get good at it in a big open space, you can apply it to more technical and difficult, tighter situations. And what you'll realize, I think, is that at class, I teach people how to brake because it's a good fundamental skill. You need to learn how to get the bike to stop. But most people, I think what you'll find is that you might not need the brakes as much as you think that you did. A good example would be Tomahawk. When I ride a Tomahawk, I only use the brakes in 2 of the turns. Every other turn, I just float into. And that's at the speed I'm carrying down the straightaway. So if I'm only using the brakes in 2 of the turns, it doesn't mean that I'm comfortable going through the turn 1,000,000 miles an hour. It means that you just carry the flow. So it should be easier for you guys to carry that flow, get off the brakes, float through the bumps, that kind of thing. Is it easier for the lighter guys? I think anything would be easier for the lighter guys. If you're comparing somebody that's 170 pounds to somebody that's 250 pounds, I think most everything is going to be easier for the 170 pounder, but not impossible for the heavier guys. Another question from Cameron: Is being a lighter framed individual more optimal for racing dirt bikes? Stu Baylor is a big fella, but is still quite fast in the woods. Seems to be a trend that majority of MX guys are smaller. I think that's changing a bit. You would have seen that in like the Stewart era and the Carmichael era. Those guys had similar builds. Even Reed was maybe slightly taller, but still similar build. Slow twitch muscles. Stewart was what, 5? Was he 5'6", 5'8"? Carmichael 5'7", 5'8", 5'6", something like that. Pretty short. I don't think A-Mart short, but definitely pretty short. I think nowadays you see Sexton, you see Jet, probably closer to my height, 5'11" to maybe close to 6 feet. and a little heavier. Probably, I'd say Sexton is heavier than Jet. Sexton's got to be in the low 170s or at least high 160s. Jet is probably high 160s, 165 to 168. That's pretty heavy, but that's a sweet spot, I think, for riding a 450. I think it's a little heavy for a 250F, but probably a sweet spot for a 450. Anything beyond that, when you're creeping up 200 plus, things are going to get more difficult. When you're 6'3" and above, things are going to get more difficult. The analogy I use for that is it's like when I went to Pastrana's house and did the pit bike race on stock KLX 110s. That was the most physically demanding thing I've ever done. Now, for some of the other guys, maybe not, because they just didn't wear gear. They sat down the whole time. Their legs were everywhere. But I was trying to ride with proper technique, which was effective, but it was extremely exhausting because I'm this big dude on a small little bike. It'd be the equivalent to Benny Bloss, 6'6". I don't know how he does it, riding his 450. It's like he's riding a pit bike. I'd say at a certain point, there's diminishing returns. It's not impossible, but it might get slightly difficult. Good question. All right, one more question from Cam, and then we'll wrap it up. Nice short episode, 40 minutes or so. You guys will have to let me know. Do you like the short solo episodes where I answer questions? Do you get bored? What are your favorite episodes? Let me know. Team will forward me that info. Question from Cam. I have a friend who has Achilles tendon injury that never got fixed and claims he can't drop his heels without risking it tearing completely. Yikes. What would be your advice to him? So the first couple things. One, I would get it fixed. I mean, if you're young enough, I don't know how old your friend is, but the only time doctors will sometimes recommend not to get an ACL or something like that fixed is if you are a very inactive individual, which you shouldn't be, or if you're super, super old and inactive. But I would say get it fixed. Second thing, if you feel as though your Achilles or your ankle is compromised in any way, getting the foot peg with the little extension off the back, I find to be quite useful. I've ridden with them before. I rode Stank Dog's bike a few times and Stank Dog would race with them. I found that for me, it allowed a decent amount of ankle flexion. Not enough for me and at my level of riding. I want to get more ankle flexion than that. But my solution when I wanted more ankle flexion was I was able to slide my foot back to where the balls of my feet were on the extension. And then I would drop heel under that. So it was creating almost even a lower point. So if you were hitting slippery whoops or riding something where you wanted to get extra traction, standing on the extension and dropping your heel below that. It worked really well for me with that foot peg. But if you're a guy that just wants a little bit of peace of mind and okay, I can create flexion, but this thing will stop me at an appropriate point, that is 100%. If I had any Achilles issues at all, I would get that foot peg to give me peace of mind. So tell your buddy, I don't know what they're called. I'm sure there's a few different brands. Tell your buddy, have him try it and report back and let me know. Thank you guys for the podcast questions. Cam, those were some awesome ones. Shout out Red Wolf Racing, Max, Chad, Ohad. Some good questions today. What is this one? Just kidding. Okay. Cool. What else? This will be one of the last episodes that goes live, or maybe the last episode that goes live before Allie, myself, and Millie go to the UK. So if you guys are in the UK and you're a Moto Academy member, shout out Mind Moto, shout out Mark 24. We're going to be hanging out with Mark 24. All of the Moto Academy members from the UK, you guys are awesome. And I'm pumped to see you. It's going to be Millie's first international trip. We'll see how she does in the long flight. We've booked some really cool hotels in some cool spots. And our strategy, we'll see how this pays off, is we're booking Relais and Chateau wherever we stay. So that way it's almost like going out to eat and going to eat at a Michelin rated restaurant. So you just know that you're getting a certain quality. And I think traveling with Millie, we just don't want to take that risk. I want Allie and Millie to feel comfortable where they could just stay, hang at the pool or whatever all day while I go to the track. And so, yeah, we're doing Relais and Chateau. If you guys have, it's basically a certain rating status for hotels. So if you guys haven't heard of that, but you like to potentially travel in style a little bit and in real comfort, look into Relais and Chateaus when you travel. Try to find them. Okay. Yeah. Shout out Moto Academy, #1 podcast in motocross. Thank you guys. Grateful for you. I got to go potty. Toodaloo.